Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new Haim album, Women in Music Part 3. Haim is the Los Angeles-based trio of sisters Danielle, Estee, and Alana Haim. They caught my ear years ago around the time of their debut album, Days Are Gone. Honestly, I was completely not immune at all to this album's charm. This was one of the most incredibly catchy and well-written pop albums of the year. It also blended elements of soft rock and R&B, and I just thought it was such a great, fresh sound. However, around the time of their follow-up album, Something to Tell You, honestly, I had a lot of conflicting thoughts on the album. Leading up to it, I thought the band was dropping some of their most mature and best singles to date, but the overall feel to this album just wasn't the same to me. It wasn't nearly as loose or organic sounding to me. To mention, it wasn't nearly as fun. Now, the singles leading up to this have been pretty decent, so I've been pretty excited to chat about this thing. Let's get into it. This album starts off with Los Angeles, and honestly, I love just how sunny and snappy and jazzy this track is. It's really just a very likable, sweet ode to the city that they grew up in. It's simple, but it's just so effective and legitimately feel good. It's a wonderful intro, even if it is a little too sunny for some, which honestly I would completely understand. The Steps, on the other hand, brings back a lot of elements that I just really loved about the early days of their music. This track is determined and it's a little rough around the edges, but honestly it's still a very well-written pop tune. It's a little more organic as well. It just feels very in the moment, which is what I loved about their early days. But this one packs real punch and just really empowering, all while remaining very catchy and easy to take in. Love the attitude here, love how catchy it is. This track is just all gravy. By the time we get to tracks like I Know Alone, honestly, it's just becoming more obvious by the minute that Haim really haven't lost what made them so special. This one hits pretty damn hard. This one is really deep, goes into a lot of feelings of loneliness. You know what? I'll be honest, I didn't think Haim had this deeply depressive track in them. It's kind of hard to sit through if this is stuff that you've dealt with. But they paint it wonderfully and make it very relatable. So overall, it's a very odd track. Even instrumentally, this is very much so out of their wheelhouse, but they carry themselves wonderfully. And Up From a Dream is really interesting as well. Rostam of Vampire Weekend fame did most of the production on this album, and his influence here is probably at its most obvious. This track may sound bouncy and carefree, but once again, looking into the lyrics, it's very real, very grim. A track about waking up from a dream to this reality that you don't want any a part of. It's something that I'm sure we've all felt. Now, there are a handful of tracks on here that honestly I feel are pretty awkward and hold this album back a little bit. For one, take Gasoline. This one just sounds like the Haim sisters just clamoring for that sound of their Days Are Gone album. I don't know, I'm sure are plenty of Haim fans that are really digging this track, but for me, this is just like pulling teeth. It's so drawn out, and once again, just not nearly sounding as organic. And 3 AM is easily my least favorite track here. It's one that I have nothing good to say about. It's basically about the pros and cons of late night booty calls. I genuinely think it is one of the cheesiest tracks that Haim has ever written. And you know what? There's supposed to be this sort of tongue-in-cheek and goofy humor here. But this is just not my cup of tea. Even this instrumental just has me heading for the hills, to be honest. Another Try is a little awkward too. This instrumental to me is just dated as anything else here. It's just weird. I mean, I feel like this track should be a knockout. It takes up a lot of the themes that the rest of this album does pretty well too. Heartbreak, breaking up, getting back together, it's all here. But for me, once again, it's very lukewarm. And I've Been Down is just so close. Look, this track is very organic, very in the moment, which I like about other tracks here, but it's just as awkward. It just doesn't sound good to me, and honestly, these vocals are some of the album's worst. And Don't Want It, to me, has a lot of potential, but it's just a little too stiff for me. It's not even as expertly written as the rest of the album. Thankfully, the themes of this track, lyrically, honestly still really hit home. It's a very timeless sentiment, and I think the sisters do a great job of putting that forward. It's fine, but I know they could do a lot better, and they do with the rest of the album. Take, for example, Leaning on You. This is one of the most down-to-earth and organic-sounding tracks here. It's one of the simpler tracks here, but I don't think that's a bad thing. It just sounds like like it came so easy to them. I mean, honestly, a stripped down acoustic ballad from Haim, to me, doesn't sound so good from a couple of miles away, but this is really good. I can say a lot of the same things about Man from the Magazine. It's once again very stripped down, but it's very intense in its own way, both instrumentally and lyrically. This one goes into some pretty intense situations with one of the Haim sisters in an interview with a guy from a magazine, and another situation dealing with a guy in a music store. And both stories kind of end up in the same vein. But here, the rawness and the stripped down vibes of this track actually make this track even more intense. And the very smoky vocals are some of the most memorable of this entire album. All That Ever Mattered is one of the most refreshing tracks here. It's slow and it's pretty steamy, but it's also one of the most experimental tracks Haim has ever done. It's sort of noisy and chaotic and genuinely strange at times. But the thoughts and the themes on this track are pretty timeless and open to interpretation. It's not what I expected going into this album, but it's something that I certainly would like to hear more of. And FUBT is honestly one of my favorite tracks on this entire album, and a great finale. I love the dirty, gritty, bluesy riff that we get here, and some of the lyrics that are some of the most emotional and heartbreaking here. The Haim sisters here dive into some pretty abusive emotional relationships that they've been in over the years, but once again presented in a way that we can all kind of understand. It's not an easy listen, but it's a pretty staggering note to leave this album on. So yeah, while I still haven't enjoyed a Haim album as much as their debut from many years ago, there's still a lot to love here. The ladies are penning some of their most emotionally driven tracks ever, some of their most mature tracks ever, and trying some new things, which is all great. I mean, still, honestly, for me, I feel like there's a handful of tracks on here that I kind of worry didn't come as easy to Haim as maybe they did years ago, but still, there's a lot to really love here. I'm feeling a very decent 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.